All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Tuesday. We are so excited to have you with us today. As you know, my name is Ginger. I'm the Executive Director of Connectionology Seminars of America, and we are excited to have you with us. I'm also very, very excited because we actually have a brand new partner that is joining us today, EmotionTrac, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear about all the great things that they do over there, as well as our wonderful partners at Fox AE, OnPoint, and HMR. So later on in the webinar, you're going to meet all of them. And then I encourage you to ask your questions. Be sure to put those in the Q&A box. That way Eric can kind of keep an eye on them, and we will try to ask them throughout the webinar. We're going to keep this pretty conversational. And then at the end of the webinar, I'm going to be sharing the contact information for all of our speakers and partners today, as well as emailing you a copy of Dr. Reddy's slides. But hopefully all of you just got the email that I just sent you. It has a link to the article based in the Washington Post about the NFL concussion settlement, which is based off of what we're going to be talking today. I cannot wait. We're going to learn a lot. So it's going to be a really good webinar. Let's go ahead and get right to it. I'm going to introduce our wonderful moderator. As you guys know, Eric Romano works in the Romano Law Group down in West Palm Beach, Florida, with our beloved John Romano. And I wanted to let you guys know a couple of things about him. He is a board certified attorney. In addition to that, which is kind of neat, is Eric actually played football. He worked for the coach Bobby Bowden down at Florida State University in 1993. He received his BS degree in business management from them as well. And that's also where he earned his JD degree from the Stetson University College of Law in 1977. And then in addition to that, Eric has gone to verdict in over 125 civil and criminal trials. He's also a past president of the Florida Justice Association, the Southern Trial Lawyers Association, as well as the Melvin Belli Society. And he's also a member of the American Association for Justice, the National Trial Lawyers, the Palm Beach County Bar Association, as well as many other great organizations around the country. One thing that is neat about Eric as well is that he concentrates a lot of his practice in the areas of personal injury and wrongful death, as well as criminal defense and commercial litigation. And he frequently lectures in the areas of both criminal and civil trial practice. And you've probably heard him on a lot of our webinars talking about trucking. So Eric, we are thrilled to have you with us today and very honored for you to be here, part of this great discussion. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, and I hope everyone enjoys the webinar.
Ginger, thank you very much for the very kind introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. You are in for a special treat today because we are joined by a very special guest, Dr. Prem Reddy. And Dr. Reddy holds a very unique distinction of having JD, MD after his name. So he is one of the very few lawyers in this country that also has a MD degree and a significant medical background. He actually was a practicing physician for about 15 years before going to law school and embarking on a career in the law with a specialty in psychiatry. He actually opened and operated a rehab facility for about 15 years, treating numerous patients over those years. That provides him with a very unique experience and perspective that he brings to the practice of law. In addition to that, we were just chatting before the webinar, he has lived all over the world. He has lived throughout the United States. And although right now he lives in Texas, his practice is primarily based in the Los Angeles area. But he's got significant experience handling and litigating a wide variety of cases. What he's going to talk with us about today is key takeaways from the NFL concussion litigation and how we can use those lessons to better represent our brain injured clients. So we really are privileged to be joined by Dr. Reddy today. And I, for one, am very, very eager to hear what he has to say. I know we've got a lot to learn and he's got a lot to teach us. So Dr. Reddy, thank you for being here today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you to Ginger and Eric and everybody at Connectionology for having me. I'm very passionate about the topic because, as we just heard, I was studying medicine before, and while I was applying for psychiatry residency, I was also doing a lot of research and externships in psychiatry. At that time, my aunt and uncle were in a car accident in Beaumont, Texas, and so I lost my aunt, and I had to take care of my uncle for about 7 years until he passed away. So I see things from all sides, from the medicine side and from the legal side, representing my clients, and also having lived it out myself. So I just see things from a different perspective. Okay, I'm going to start sharing my slides. Okay, let's see. Can everybody see my slides? Is that good? All right. I'll go back. Okay. Right. So most of what I talk today is going to be based on the article from the Washington Post on January 31st, 2024. And I also add my own spin on it as to how we can use that to serve our clients better. So this is National Brain Injury Awareness Month, and there's something that I heard, which is brain health issues is what it's called, and not mental health issues. I kind of like that term, brain health issues, because this means that the brain has a connection to the body, and people are getting more aware that it's just not mental health. It's the fact that when you have a problem in your brain, it affects your entire body. So when we deal with our TBI clients, this is something you can use because you see the CDC themselves say that a person may not recognize or admit that they are having problems, which is why you're having such a big gap in treatment, because the first time you're sending them to a neurologist, or the first time they see a neurologist, is months or a long time after the event. So the CDC says that. And also, they also mentioned that a person may not understand how the symptoms they are experiencing affect their daily activities. So if they don't even know what's wrong with them or why they're doing something wrong is because of their brain, how are they going to go and tell the doctor I have a problem? Also, problems may be overlooked by the person with the mild TBI or concussion, family members, or healthcare providers. Right there on the CDC website, they say even healthcare providers can miss it. So quote this if they keep saying, well, no doctor ever said that he has a problem or she has a problem, and they've been going to the doctor all the time. And we'll see this later on as to why this is so. But right there from the CDC website, I like to use this, and it kind of gives you the jury at least will be looking out for you and saying, hey, wow, okay, the CDC says this, so wow, maybe there is something to this. Now let's talk about a few key points from the Washington Post article. So a brief history. So the players initially, they thought that, what they had was just Alzheimer's or just Parkinson's or just ALS. So they didn't think that there was something wrong with their brain to go seek help for that. And the only reason they sued was because CTE was being discovered in the brains of former NFL players. So the lawsuits began in 2011. About 75 players sued the NFL in California. Then 7 more filed suit in the federal court in Philadelphia. Then many more wanted to come in. And so the courts, they just consolidated everything to Philadelphia. Now, what they were seeking for was financial damages and care for those who had the symptoms, and for healthy players in case they develop problems later in life. Now, this got me thinking, do they really know what they're asking for? I know they're asking for damages, but to me, it felt like, it's just what they're saying is, I just don't feel good. Something's just not right with my body. I forget things, I'm moody, just something's just not right. So there's a cry for help, but they don't know what they're asking for. So in terms of the settlement, where the NFL admits no wrongdoing, and it's an uncapped settlement. Players who were discovered to have had CTE were going to be paid when they developed dementia. In order to meet this dementia, they had to meet a higher standard, which is the CDR score. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So in the 7 years since the settlement, about $1.2 billion has been paid to about 1,600 former players and family. The family of players who died the decade before the settlement and who were diagnosed with CTE would get paid. And there's also a clause where they could review the diagnostic criteria every 10 years over the 65 years of the lifespan of the settlement. It was invoked once in 2021 for race norming negotiations. I think it should be looked at again because the diagnostic criteria is really not that good. So you have to prove that the dementia is not due to anything else, that it was actually due to that play in the NFL or the CTE itself. So that's what they had to prove, that the dementia was not due to anything else. Isn't that sound familiar in our cases as well? You know, that the TBI is not due to anything else, not due to any pre-existing diabetes, not due to anything else. It's just due to the TBI itself. And also the settlement also said that, you know, it would fund a nationwide network of doctors to evaluate and care at no cost. But the problem is sometimes they have to travel long distances or wait long in order to see the doctors. So the player's attorney, Chris Seeger, he was an amateur boxer before. And I just wonder if maybe he could have used this to maybe just relate to the players better. Maybe when he's making the settlements and the deals, maybe he could have just talked about it or maybe related better to the players. One thing he said was, you know, when people started criticizing what he was doing is people to this day don't understand the victories that we have had to get that 1.2 billion deal. So yeah, as attorneys, you know, we make a lot of deals. We may have a lot of small victories which nobody will ever hear of. And, you know, at the end, we get this final deal, but nobody kind of knows what we had to go through to get to that deal. So I do understand what he's saying here. Now, from the NFL side, their attorney stated, you know, only if the settlement had been in place earlier, treatment could have helped. And the NFL is proud of this settlement. And it provides players with a peace of mind due to the substantial compensation or the benefits. But in reality, does it really, you know, give them a peace of mind? Is it really coming to them on time? Are they passing away before they get their benefits? Are the benefits enough? Is there enough research? Is there enough treatment that they can get with the compensation that they even get if they do get it? So they thought that the whole thing was handled fairly and that the league's dementia standard was not difficult to satisfy, just more objective. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little while. Okay, so let's take a look at what the players and family thought about this. Similar to, you know, the clients that I've seen and that we've all seen in TBI cases, what do they say? I didn't want this. Who wants to have a TBI? Who wants to have this injury? And another quote is, hoping like hell it would turn out that there was nothing wrong with me. That's what we want to find out. If I'm hurt, I want to, you know, say, hey, there's nothing wrong with me. Or, you know, it seems like my life don't matter. They're waiting me out to settle with my kids. There was just one time when I actually passed out, and when I came back to my senses, this is because I had some food poisoning and I had passed out. As soon as I came to, you know, the first thing I said to the paramedics was like, "I'm fine, I'm okay. There's nothing wrong with me." But all the time I knew I was foggy. I wasn't in my right mind. But the first thing I'm going to say is, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with me," because that's my default. I don't want to tell anybody there's something wrong with me. I want to tough it out, and I think it's going to get better. I just had a client, and he was saying, this can't be permanent, right? There's got to be something, you know, that can get better. Who wants to have this? Also, the lead client said that no lawyers ever explained that the settlement had its own definition for dementia. Didn't know anything about this. I would not have been cool with it had he told me. Now, there could be both sides to this. Maybe he was told this, and maybe they forget it because of the dementia, the brain issue, the memory issue. So maybe he didn't hear properly, or maybe it wasn't ever told to him. Maybe it wasn't communicated well enough to him, and had it been communicated, maybe he would have said, "No, it's not. You know, it's not enough." And as attorneys, we should listen to that as well, because maybe what the deal we're getting is not what they want. It's not about the deal; it's about really what they want. Now, some of the family of these players, what did they say? Well, it feels like a bait and switch. The league told them that if you get one of these diseases, you'll get a check. So very similar frustrations that we see with our TBI clients' families and over here as well. Now, the lawsuit, it uses the CDR rating, which is the Clinical Dementia Rating Scale. This is something that was used in the 70s for research for Alzheimer's. And the standard is higher than that in regular clinical use. It's used in research work and not diagnostic work. So why would you want to use that here? Is it just because they found a scale which works for them, or wasn't there something else and they wanted something more severe to look at it? But if it's something that's more severe, then wouldn't they use that in regular clinics? So it doesn't make too much sense there. And also, some of the criteria is like, you know what, you need to be unable to function independently at social events and need prompting in personal hygiene activities. So if I'm having difficulty, going to the restroom, or if I can comb my hair, but I'm having difficulty, just guiding my comb, but I'm able to do it, I'm okay here. If I'm able to drive and if I actually go to work, then I don't have a dementia according to this. So it doesn't take into account the fact that maybe I'm doing a desk job and I used to be able to be highly functional before, or I'm driving, but I take the, local roads instead of the highways, or every time I drive, I'm just, it's harder for me because I have to look at the street lights, the stop sign, the pedestrians, and I go there, but I'm slower. Now, the three categories of dementia that they classified is, moderate cognitive impairment, that's pre-dementia, early dementia, where you get up to $1.5 million, and moderate dementia, where you get up to $3 million. Well, not everybody's going to get this, and the actual check may vary from denial to less than this. So some of the other obstacles that they would face was they had to wait for months. So the average wait was about 6 months. And to see the NFL doctor and get the dementia diagnosis took that long. And then they have to wait 9 months more. Also, the neuropsych testing, as you maybe have seen in your practice, it's very subjective and there's wide scoring variations. So if you're dependent on that and based on the bias of who's giving the test, it could be an issue. And of course, they needed money to go to the doctors. Yes, the NFL had a set of doctors to go to, but it took time there. So if they have to go to their own doctors, they have to pay money to go to them. And if they didn't have the money, even to travel to the doctor, well, they would not go or get treatment. And also, you wouldn't get paid if it was just a mood symptom. Like if you just had symptoms of depression or rage, well, you wouldn't get paid because they'd say, well, that's not CTE, that's not dementia. You need a CTE-related dementia diagnosis in order to get paid. And also imaging. So how good is the imaging? Let's just say, even if they do have imaging, right? And if they do slices of, like, say, 5 millimeters, well, are you missing everything that's between those 5 millimeter slices? Maybe if you had a 2 millimeter slice, it would pick up more. But what if you still don't get it on that? And as we know, imaging doesn't show you everything. These are all microscopic level injuries, so you may not see this on an imaging. Only an autopsy is definitive. And so what do people do? So you can't take it out on somebody else. You don't want to take out this mood swings on somebody else, and you just don't feel right. So you take it out on yourself, and eventually you just commit suicide, which we have seen in, sadly, many cases of NFL CTE. Some more obstacles. Are the doctors diagnosing properly? I've had this issue with both the plaintiff's doctors and the defense doctors. So everything I'm going to say today kind of applies to both sides. I'm not just picking one side or the other. I've had this problem on both sides. How much time is being spent with the client? Are you doing it in half an hour? Are you doing it in an hour, but you're just doing a few tests? Are you checking for every part of the brain? What I've seen is just a couple of questions done, basic memory tests, a couple other things. Yeah, they have these problems. And it kind of baffles me because it can be done. There's so many ways to do these tests, and you can come up with your own methods. It's real simple. And you can actually test for every part of the brain. Also, denial. Remember this. So sometimes if the parietal lobe is damaged, what can happen is you start denying your symptoms. What you say is, oh, I don't have a problem. It's not that you don't have a problem. You're not able to recognize that you have a problem. So if you go to a doctor and you're saying, hey, I have A, B, and C symptoms, I'm fine. I don't have anything else. My brain's fine. How is he going to document? How is he going to ask the next question? If you're saying you're fine, they're not going to probe anymore. Also, if your frontal lobe is damaged, sometimes, you can have a motivation problem. So you're at the doctor's office, you go there because you want to get seen, but you just don't have the motivation to tell them the answer. And if they don't ask you the question, you're not going to volunteer that answer. So do the doctors even consider this? Do they initiate the questions, or are they waiting for the patient to tell them their symptoms? Are they overworked? Are they having so many clients out there that they're like, okay, I need to know these answers. So A, B, C, and D. If you don't tell me, I'm just moving on to the next question. Are they checking labs? Are they checking endocrine labs? Well, last time I checked, pituitary was part of the brain, and you have endocrine hormones being produced from there too. Is there something affected there? Are they really doing proper imaging? And what about this thing called pseudobulbar syndrome, where you actually would be, laughing inappropriately or crying inappropriately? It reminds me, I saw a NFL player at one of the seminars, and he was sitting there with his shades on, of course, light sensitivity. And his attorney was there next to him, and he had gotten his compensation, very good job. But what the NFL player was saying was, I just feel like crying for no reason. I guess it's kind of therapeutic, like, it just, I guess it feels good to do this. But what was really happening was that he was having a problem, that he was laughing or crying inappropriately. And there was a doctor in the audience who said, hey, I have this treatment, do you want to see this? And nobody kind of listened to him, because they're like, oh, it's okay, I'll just live with it. But there really is treatment for all of these things, and you can't just hide it under the rug because your doctor doesn't tell you. If you educate yourself, you can actually help your client and help them to take care of themselves, and actually document these things as symptoms and give them to the treating neuro. Also, there's a long time between the complaints and the compensation. So what happens is the person dies. I mean, that's what I'm afraid of many times with my clients. It's like, is my client going to pass away? I had this one client I was representing, and in the middle, he had some heart complications. What happens when you have a TBI and you can't move, or you have injuries and you can't move? You're sitting there. And when you're sitting there, you have more chances of forming clots. So I was like, is this guy going to die on me? So I was trying to do everything I could in order to do my best to speed up the whole process. So by denying and complain and asking the NFL players to wait longer or longer for the compensation to actually show up, are they waiting for them? I mean, are they actually dying in the process? Also, all this prior history, like diabetes, blood pressure, and all these things, are our doctors or the NFL doctors saying that, hey, it's all just prior diabetes. He always had a high blood pressure. He was always angry. I mean, that's who he was. Look at him. I mean, he went to the NFL so that he could gain control of his life. He was always angry. So what's the difference? I don't see it, right? He was a better person after starting sports. So are they really comparing the two? Are they just faultily saying, hey, it's all something from the past? What about prior white matter hyperintensities? Just because somebody has a white matter hyperintensity in their brain doesn't mean that that's actually the cause. I had a client who actually had a big white matter hyperintensity in one of the areas of his brain. And so, as expected, the DME came back and tried to say, yeah, everything is related to the past. Well, my question would be at that point was, well, can you tell me exactly? Well, you're saying that he's got a white matter hyperintensity in his brain. So tell me what you saw in his past medical history that told you that that part of the brain's affected. Like if it's a parietal lobe, like what happened? Was his calculation affected? What happened? Did you see anything? And of course, they're not going to be able to tell you what the problem was because they were normal before. Because even though they have that problem, doesn't always mean that there's a problem. When you see a symptom, that's when you know that the hyperintensity is real. I also had another client or a research subject that had his MRI done, and his brain just lit up with all these white matter hyperintensities, and he had the highest scoring test that we had ever seen. So it just depends. And some of them are actually told that it's just a B12 deficiency. That's all it is. It's as simple as that. So in the post review, they found that of 14 people that didn't qualify and died, well, looking back, 11 of them had severe disease. 6 of them were never diagnosed with dementia, but all of them were confirmed CTE on autopsy, and all of them complained of dementia symptoms. And some of the value of the denied was $700 million or so, and it could have been much more. Think about those who did not report, how much more was saved there, right? And how much money is being made, and how much money is really set apart for compensation for these poor people that are affected. And also some of the critiques for this was Adam Zimmerman, professor at USC Gold School of Law. He said that this is a systemic failure at every level. They're dying while waiting. And my fear is that that's also true in the TBI world. Even with well-meaning attorneys on both sides, is it just that the system is just failing everything, that there's just a disconnect so bad that ultimately the care is not being given to the TBI clients? Also, an NFL settlement doctor, Dr. Randolph Evans, with 30 years experience, a neurologist in Houston. So some of his players that he was diagnosing with dementia, they were denied. And they were told that, the reason is that they could still drive, they could still go to work. So it's just not severe enough under the scale. So they were denied. And, so he called that CDR rating junk science, and what do you know? The contract was terminated. I don't know what the relations one to another, but, you figure it out. And some also claim that, if the NFL doctor wanted to approve the claims, that they were actually asked to reconsider. But what about vice versa? If there was a denial, would they consider, reversing that? Now let's take a look at some of the, unfortunate stories, right? Glenn Ray Hines had trouble expressing himself in a conversation, had trouble managing finances. And what did the review doctor say? No dementia. Why? Because you're still able to exercise and you're still driving. The appeal will cost money, so he didn't do it. Ed Latimer lost on routine drives, but didn't score low enough on cognitive tests. After death, found severe CTE. I've had this to my clients as well. I mean, they drive around and they're like, I just don't know how I got here. Ask these questions, to your clients when you have an interview with them, because sometimes they won't know to tell you these things. And if you ask the question, hey, when you go somewhere, do you get lost? Or ask the family members, hey, what's going on with this guy? What do you know? Don Maynard went to the NFL doctors in 2019 at age 84. After 2 years, he got lost in the bureaucratic network, and he got his letter afterwards, and it was told that he had moderate dementia. But guess what? They also wanted an unresponsive settlement neuropsychologist to evaluate. Kind of like what we have. You have a kind of TBI. Well, they want a neuropsychologist to evaluate our clients as well. Well, he got a check, $52,000, in September 2022, after he died in Jan 10th, 2022. What use is that going to give him? Not only should the money come in before, but it's got to come in time to be able to make them go and get the right treatments. Irv Cross struggled to speak coherently, forgot to change his clothes, urinary incontinence. Settlement doctors could not diagnose Cross with anything. He met the standard for dementia, but not the NFL standard. 3 years later, an autopsy, a CTE. So that's my argument. Are you going to wait till the autopsy to find the diagnosis of CTE? Or are you going to see what's more likely than not? You have a triggering event, you have the symptoms, it's corroborated by everybody, and you can treat him when he's or she's alive. Isn't that better? Albie Miller, filed in 2019, was diagnosed with dementia 4 years later. Needed round-the-clock assistance for meals, showers, and dressing. The NFL review doctor thought it was depression that was causing the dementia symptoms, and died 2 years later from dementia. Freeman White, diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2013, died of cancer 5 years later. The settlement review doctor suggested that, again, symptoms from just vitamin B12 deficiency. So you know what you should do if you have this? Have them take the vitamin B12 and say, okay, so we're taking the vitamin B12, now what? You're still having the symptoms, right? Okay, so talk about why we are missing the TBI. Just like we saw with the NFL players, our clients don't know it's brain damage. They hope nothing's wrong. They don't want this. They don't know how to express it. They're just looking for help. And sometimes their language for help is different. We have to learn their language, what they're saying, because it's different. Sometimes they're just stressing out, and they just feel sad afterwards, because I just can't help myself. And sometimes the problem, it happens years later. So how do you link that to the injury? Because as you see with NFL players, they're fine, they're retired, and then a couple of years later, they're like, hey, I don't feel so right. So how do you relate this TBI event to the injury? And by the time they have these symptoms after a TBI event, is that too late? Is the statute of limitations run out on them? Is that part of the reason of the systemic failure in our side? And they're also trying to live normal lives. So they're going to work. They're not sitting there at home and saying, oh, I have an injury. I just want to, stay home. And then, hey, I want a paycheck. No, they're actually going to work. They're actually driving. They're taking care of the kids. Or as I've seen, you go to the doctors and then they tell you, hey, there's nothing we can do for you. What do? I mean, are you going to go back to the doctor, or are you just going to say, okay, fine, let's suck it up and be like, I have to live with this pain and keep moving on? Capture those stories, get them into your case and argue that. Miscommunication. Okay, so all kinds of miscommunication. Is there an attorney-client miscommunication? Is the client sometimes saying contradicting stuff? I had a client, right before the deposition, he was able to say, yeah, this picture that I took was 3 months after the event. And yeah, I really don't know if it's the same thing or not, but I just know that I went there, I took that picture, and that's kind of what it is. Come to the depot, he's like, I took that picture 3 days later. That's the exact thing that I sat on. That's the exact picture that depicts the exact same thing. I mean, like, you just said something contradictory before. Is it because they don't remember, and is that harming your case? What if you tell them to go to the neuro doctor and then they're like, I just forgot the appointment? Okay, what if it's the other way around? The attorney is not listening to the client. Maybe the client is telling them TBI symptoms like, hey, I just have headache, yeah, I took some pills, I'm fine, don't worry about it. Or I had a case where I took a history and the father was saying, my son's got a Tylenol bottle in his car. Normally, you'd kind of brush that off, but then I said, hold on a second. Why is he having that in his car? He keeps it in the car all the time. How many is he taking? I found out that he's taking so many. It's actually, not right. So these little symptoms like that, when they tell you, are you listening for these symptoms? If you listen for that, you might actually find your diagnosis right there. I also find a miscommunication between, the attorney and even our own doctors. Okay, so I talked to some of my colleagues and they're like, I don't get enough collateral information. I'm not getting enough information to put in my chart. So are we sending, the collateral information or collateral person with the client to make sure that the information is passed on? Because sometimes they have this brain injury, they can't remember everything. And not every single time they can tell every single thing that they want. And sometimes the doctors do not ask them the whole thing, which is the other way. Is a doctor not asking all the right questions to elicit this from, our patients? So both ways. Also the client and the treating doctor, the treating doctor sometimes they never ask the TBI questions. So you go to an orthopedic guy, and that's why you miss this on all these reports. And so funny, you see this mental status exam normal because all the check is for are you alert oriented and just a couple of things like that. If they don't ask the correct TBI questions, well, they're not going to document that. If they don't document it, they're not going to refer it out to somebody else. So the treating doctors, even the family physicians, sometimes just don't ask that question. And we all know when you go to the ER, all they do is stabilize you, and you have to follow up with your doctor later on, because most of the times the tests are negative and you see the symptoms later on anyway, right? And sometimes, of course, the client doesn't think that this is pertinent to the treatment. So yeah, I have a headache, but I didn't think that it was pertinent. I lost consciousness, but I didn't think it was pertinent because the doctor never asked me, Or I had a case where I was talking to the client and he told me, I've not been able to get a good night's sleep. I get up in the night and I cry. I sit at the edge of the bed at 4 a.m. because I don't want my wife to listen that I'm crying. That's what he told me. So he goes to the doctor and I expect that to be on the report. What do I see? Normal sleep. Then I asked the client, I said, what is it? He said, well, the doctor asked me, did you have good sleep? And I told him I had good sleep because I thought he was asking about last night, and I took my medications and I slept well. So those kind of misunderstandings, can lead to a bad report. What about, again, doctor issues where, the ER, the ortho does not ask the right questions, doesn't send them to the right referral, Or sometimes, they tell the triage nurse, hey, I have this problem, but it's not passed on to the doctor. I had another client where I'm looking at the notes and I'm like, you didn't mention any of this to your doctor on day one. He goes, no, I told them that. I told the nurse, I told the doctor that. Why it's not in the chart? Is somebody else writing the notes? Because that now they can even like have another person writing the notes. They can lease it out to somebody else. They'll look at the videos and make notes, and the doctor's got to sign off. Or there's somebody else like a scribe or a PA writing the notes and somebody's signing off on it. Are they checking everything? Or is it cut and paste from, I have a template, I just cut and paste it, and I'm just, rearranging the whole thing, or I cut and paste from the patient's old notes, and this event happened after the TBI, but I am just cutting and pasting from the past to the present, and I'm just erasing and writing stuff here. So keep that in mind and explain these things why it's not in the charts. Okay,
Dr.
so
Reddy?
yeah, sure.
Oh, would now be like a really good time we could take a
Sure.
quick break.
No problem.
And this has been so interesting so far as well. I see some questions are already starting to come into the Q&A box as well. But we're going to take a really fast break because I wanted to introduce two of our amazing partners. As you guys know, Cody, he is traveling today, but he has brought in the next best thing. So we have Nathaniel here with us, who's here to share with you guys all the great things that they do over at Fox AE. Nathan, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me again, and good to see Dr. Reddy again. Met you at the Lanier conference this last year, and yeah. So let me kind of explain what we do. So we're our forensic traffics company, and we create demonstrative exhibits that you can use in mediation, even demand letters, or in trial. So we do everything from car auto accident reconstruction, medical procedures, med mal. So let me show you a little bit regarding the brain side of things. So in this one here, this is just a still shot showing some axonal shearing. This one was particularly a carbon monoxide case, but we like to what we call colorize our our MRI images or CT images. And so what we take is we take the raw one, put it on the right for clarification and the showing how it is completely accurate. And on the left side, we show all the cool textures and the nasty injuries. And we also can turn that into an animation, which as you can see here, it kind of shows you normal brain, and then we go in and show you exactly where that slice in the CT scan is. And we take it, fade into that colorized image. And then you can see all the contusions, hyperdensity, all those injuries that your client has. And we do compare different sets of scans. So in this case, they had a contusion that went untreated and is now a chronic contusion. And this one goes on for a bit. So I'll go ahead and switch to the other one. And this is a DTI case that we had, again, a carbon monoxide case, but we show the normal DTI scans, and then we show all of the missing parts. And we like to take that pretty rainbow color and turn it into something that looks more like damage and injuries rather than the happy rainbow colors. And so we do slice by slice, show you all the different injuries inside the brain. And then we show you the brain that you can't really see the injuries, but as soon as we fade it in or fade out the exterior of the brain, you can see all the tiny little details inside and all the damage. And that's a huge chunk of damage in that client's brain.
These are amazing images, Nathan. Thank you so much for sharing them. And I know you guys can do way more than this. You cover just about anything you can imagine. You've got an incredible team of people working with you. Please, I hope everybody watching will definitely reach out to Nathan if you have any questions. And I think you're going to put your information in the chat box so everybody can stay in touch. But wow, thank you for amazing us again today. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you back here soon. And thank you for all that you guys do. And now, you guys, I'm very excited because we've got Jonathan Brickman. He's coming in today to share with you guys all the great things that they do over at EmotionTrac. So let me bring him in real fast. And I think he's going to be playing this really great video for you that will kind of explain all the things that they do. Jonathan, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Thanks, Ginger, and nice to see you again, Eric.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I told everybody you got this great video and we are looking forward to seeing it. But please share anything that you guys like. And I'm so excited that you guys are here with us today. Excited to hear what you guys are going to talk about as well. So the
Absolutely.
floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, no, listen, we help litigators test lots of different types of cases, including TBI. Interesting to hear the stuff you're working on, Dr. Reddy. I'm going to give you guys a chance to actually have a little bit of fun and watch just a quick video that we created that I hope will tell the story about what we do. It's a little embarrassing because you're going to see me on there as the star of the show, but I'm going to play this for you. It's just a couple of minutes.
And I don't hear the sound. Do you guys hear the sound, Dr. Reddy?
Oh, wait, hang on one second.
Okay.
Let me make sure I share
And just a
this.
reminder to everybody watching, you're going to receive a copy of the slides and all of the contact information for our speakers and our partners at the end of the webinar today.
Okay, here we go again. I share the sound.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Jonathan Brickman. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for EmotionTrac.com, and we are an AI-powered focus group platform. Lawyers are very experienced. They've done lots of trials, they've done lots of mediation, they've litigated lots of cases, but there are things they miss that the human eye just cannot pick up. We help lawyers learn how their story is going to resonate before they go into battle. We've created a platform that leverages an artificial intelligence model that picks up what's called facial action coding. It measures what's called microfacial expressions. And so we can see when somebody is exhibiting an expression and they don't even realize they're doing this, the facial expression is mapped to the corresponding emotion. And this is based on years of science. They've been trying to figure this stuff out since Darwin days, believe it or not. You're not going to do a 2-hour opening statement. So what we force them to do is distill it down into the key core components. So that exercise actually of forcing them to produce, we say, a 5-minute piece of reel, that forced them to get very, very focused. When they give us their reel, whatever it is they want to test, they're going to give us that content. Then we together are going to decide on who the panel lines is going to be. That's going to simulate the jury pool. We go through a process of pushing out that content, inviting people to the test. As soon as that first person views the content, the data is streaming back to the lawyer on their dashboard. It's beautiful. You can see the data coming in. It eliminates a lot of that bias. You don't have a group bias anymore because now I got one person individually viewing this content and responding. I don't have the dynamics of a group. I don't have the bully in the group that's influencing other people. I've just got one-on-one with that respondent. We bring all the data back to the platform, then we aggregate it, and then we tell the story. To know if this story is going to impact the right way. And they also want to know what, I want to maximize the value for my client. So they want an evaluation. Those are the two things that we're going to deliver to them in a very, very efficient way. Okay, that is it.
That is awesome, Jonathan. And I wanted to ask, are you guys working with clients all across the country?
We are, yeah. We work from coast to coast, everybody in the middle. We've even started working with some people in Canada as well. The
Okay.
panel audience that we have is it's a global panel marketplace that we have. There's about 350 million people globally. There's about 30 million in the US, and there's maybe another 5 million in the Canada.
Oh, that is incredible. And I'm hoping everybody watching, if you've got some more questions for Jonathan, please reach out to him. He's going to put his information in the chat box as well. And we're excited to have you back. I can't wait to hear even more great things that you guys do over there. I know that Romano Law Group thinks the world of you guys too, so we're happy to bring you on. And we're going to have a good time. Look forward to doing some more work with you guys.
Thank you. Thanks again, Ginger. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
You bet.
All right, Dr. Reddy, back to you.
All right. And if you haven't seen Cody or his work, I mean, you have to look at the nuances that he does. It's not just the imaging that you see, the thought process that goes into his mind. I mean, it's amazing. You got to talk to the guy. So all those little things he talks about, the way he rotates the brain, the way he brings in the DTI imaging with the brain, it's amazing. All that stuff is really great stuff. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen.
Dr. Reddy, before you continue, would you mind if I jump in and ask two questions that have been
Sure.
submitted from the audience?
Sure.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and just read the first one to you. It looks like a multiple part question, so let's take them one at a time. Is a major criteria of diagnostic dementia related to CTE contemporaneous symptoms compared to years playing and how long the individual has been out of the league?
So the criteria for dementia is something that the DSM is what clinicians use, and the one that they're using is something different. The problem is even the DSM itself has been criticized. These are man-made symptoms. I was going to talk about it later, but I'll talk about it now. These are man-made symptoms. So people are making these symptoms, and it keeps changing, right? The DSM-4 and the DSM-5. So they all keep changing. So the reality is that what the problem is, was it there before and was it there after? The problem is, you're right, the length of time that the person's been out of the league, that's very hard to compare. What caused it? Is it just regular age-related dementia? What is that? And the more research we have, the more patterns that we can build up, that's really the only way you can kind of tell about that.
Okay. Next part of the question. For older people or an individual with comorbidities, how would you pinpoint and distinguish an ambiguous finding on MRI or CT, for example, lesions, white matter, remnant of TIA or stroke, that can be simply age-related with that of CTE or dementia symptoms?
That's a very good question. The first good thing, if you're having an expert on the side, ask him to explain what those things mean. The moment you ask them to explain, they'll fumble, they'll slow down, and they'll give you what you want because they'll make errors in what they're saying. When you're looking at all these things, you're right. It is ambiguous findings on the CT MRIs. What do you do if you have all these great symptoms and you go for those expensive tests and what you find is nothing, a whole bunch of nothing, right? You always have to rely on the symptoms and what was the before and what was the after. If you do have a white matter hyperintensity, did this actually cause the symptoms of someone who would have a problem in this part of the brain? If no, then you can say, hey, yes, he had this problem, but it wasn't because of that. You look at the symptoms now and say, well, maybe he developed something around it. Maybe some other areas in the brain develop white matter hyperintensities. So the new symptoms are correlating to what areas of the brain that you're finding.
All right, moving on. In your experience, do a majority of TBI cases demonstrate a patient having a consistent or somewhat linear pattern of symptoms that become worse over time or are at least constant?
Okay, so let me give you an example of my uncle who had the TBI. What did they say when you have a TBI? They'll get better. Everybody gets better. That's the report, right? Well, my uncle, who was after he retired, he was a missionary, and so when he got better, and my dad rehabbed him for some time, he actually would get up and go and preach. Okay, so here's a guy who had a big TBI. I mean, he was confused as to who people were, who could not even read, word blindness, and he would just preach from his memory. Okay, he was that good. But the reality is, if you examine every single detail, he couldn't read his Bible. He couldn't read it. And he was just doing stuff from whatever was left over in his memory. If you started talking to him closely, you could say, hey, this is not coherent in what he's doing. If you saw him off the stage in his private life, you'd be like, wow, this is completely messed up. So yes, they do get better. But what happens is they're masking a lot of the symptoms. And over time, they decline.
All right. Last, if a patient reports on again, off again symptoms that purportedly resolve and come back, or are various all over the place symptoms, are there any features that you focus on to rule out or rule in or distinguish if someone had a TBI?
That's a very good question. So look at the population of symptoms before. So let's just say, now, okay, there's on again and off again symptoms. Why is that so? Maybe it's because they're not paying attention to it. Maybe they're going to work and they're not remembering it. They do have the symptoms. Or maybe, when you're suddenly more depression comes in, you lose your job, or you have a financial problems under more stressful conditions, the symptoms are aggravated and now you notice it more. Look at the constellation of symptoms. If they're happening more now than they were before, then you point to it. Hey, yes, maybe he had the symptoms, but maybe once or twice in the last 15 years. After this event, he's got like 4 or 5 events now. Yeah, they're spaced out, but the frequency is more now. Look at the frequency.
Those are all the questions for now, so I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. All righty. All righty, there we go. So we're talking about why they're being misdiagnosed. So sometimes, the doctor says, it's just something else. It's not TBI. You'll get better. Like I said, just a B12 deficiency. Don't worry about it. Maybe, the expert's not trained. Maybe they're not a TBI expert. They're a neurologist, but they're a TBI expert. Don't be surprised. Not everybody knows how to evaluate properly. And of course, if the patient doesn't report the symptoms, it's not on the chart. Here's one thing. Sometimes the doctors get, hung up on diagnoses rather than symptoms. I wish they would just, at least give me the symptoms and put that in the chart. Even if they don't have a diagnosis, hey, patient has complaints of A, B, and C. It's not complete to have a diagnosis, but these are the symptoms. Then you have a record of it, and then you can, add it all together later on when it becomes worse. So that's some of the reasons why they're not being diagnosed, is because they're hung up on the diagnoses. Also, is the doctor under pressure from the insurances? If they're using their own insurance to get treatment, are there insurance guidelines that are dictating it? You have the DSM criteria, but there's also those pesky insurance guidelines. If I don't bill a certain way, I'll get denied. So I have to write a certain way, bill a certain way. I can't do all the testing that I want. It's not going to get reimbursed. So is that affecting what the doctor is doing as far as diagnosing it? And does he have other patients out there? Is he pressed for time? Does he have to go to surgery? Is there an emergency? These are real life situations that could maybe factor into why they're missing the diagnosis or asking the right questions. And how about this? Sometimes you just don't believe the client. And why? Because the clients had a head injury. They're hostile. They're unlikable. And they're inconsistent. You tell me you have a symptom now, and the other time you deny it. Maybe that part of the brain's being activated, and I'm denying the symptoms. Maybe it's just a part of the brain injury. So if they don't believe the client, they're not going to write that diagnosis down. I'm going to go back to slide 12 now, just for a second. The other way, sorry. Oh. Go back. Here we go. Same thing here. Is our doctor spending enough time with the client? Are they detailed with every single question, every single part of the brain? Are they factoring in denial and motivation? Are they doing endocrine labs at all? Are they seeing, hey, maybe his brain's affected. Maybe his hormone needs to be checked. Are they just chalking it up to all priors? Are they saying it's prior white matter hyperintensity or just a B12? So these are all the things that our doctors are doing as well, which is why they don't believe the client. So how do you build your case? Other than the fact that if I ever see an opposing counsel that's rude or brash, I'm like, thank you, because you've kind of told me your game plan, because the more they're angry, the more they're belligerent, I kind of know I'm pushing some right buttons, right? But also by that token, there's always the nice guys, which kind of I have to be cautious about the most because I don't know what they're thinking. But of course, each experience is different. Tell the story from the client's words, and from the collateral information, like a family member, somebody from work, somebody from church. You know how powerful it is if you can get somebody from church who says, he used to be able to, show up all the time, but now he can't. Or, he was the first person there, and now he's not able to come up there. Let everybody tell a different story. It's, it gives you more stories and more, it builds up all your symptoms properly. And another thing I'd like for you to do is cover all the symptoms. If you see that, the patient's got A, B, C symptoms, cover them all in the stories. If he's got problems with calculation, well, somebody can talk about the fact that he's, having problems doing his taxes maybe, or something like that. So cover all the brain areas with collateral information or the client's own words. And fill in the gaps of the treatment, right? Ask the client why you didn't go to a certain treatment. Why did you not go here? Why are you frustrated? Are you frustrated because, there's no hope for you to receive treatment? I'm sure you're like, why should I go to the doctor? I have to drive 30 minutes. I have to spend all day. And after all that, they're just going to tell me no, and then I have to pay for this, and there's no pain relief. Why should I go? So maybe the client will give you a good answer. So always ask them, why did you not go to the doctor? Fill in the bad gaps. Fill in, those sub rosa issues that you might have. A friend of mine had a case where a back injury, and so you're claiming you can't bend, you can't lift your child. And here is the sub rosa of this woman on high heels, holding her child, moving around, and there's music playing in the background. So, of course, you want to settle the case for less, but what if you ask the client, there's video of you on YouTube doing this. And so saying, take it down, explain it. And what if she would have told you, I'm tired of sitting at home. I'm tired of this back pain. I took my pills. I just wanted to feel good. I wanted to wear these high heels because that makes me feel good. I wanted to hold my child because that gives me joy. For a moment, I just wanted to feel good. So I took my high heels. I looked at my child. In that moment, I forgot my pain. But after that, for 3 days, I was on the back. I was on the bed with back pain. Wouldn't that be a better story? And you have now turned your bad fact into something good, and now the jury kind of wants to feel sympathy for your client. Okay, so your intake. Have a checklist. Have your own checklist. Okay, don't wait for the neurologist to give you a TBI diagnosis. Have your own checklist. Ask the client all these things. What did they miss? Their enjoyment in life. How it's affected their life. Every single area that's affected. And beware of denial, because they'll say, well, I'm fine, nothing's wrong with me. So beware of that as well. Ask the collateral. Their spouse will tell you, oh, yeah, he's got a problem, or yeah, she's got a problem. She always yells at this, or they're forgetting things all the time. Ask about pre-existing medicals, because you want to get a control of the situation. So you want to know what their pre-existing medicals are, what their gaps in treatment are, what their bad facts are, to catch all the red flags. And of course, ask the client to explain anything. You will get beautiful answers if you ask the client to explain rather than you coming up with something on your own. Of course, get collateral information and have a game plan. Like, make sure your client's going to the doctor's appointments, because like I said, sometimes they don't have any motivation. Sometimes, family's frustrated with them. So they're like, well, I don't want to take them, or I don't want to take her. So make sure they're going to their appointments. And if they're going to the appointments, make sure that, you're getting these symptoms on the record, that, somebody's going with them. Tell the client how important it is for them to be able to convey their true symptoms to their physicians and, get those things on the records. Because if you don't tell them, you're just going sending them to the doctor. Okay, I went to the doctor. He didn't ask me anything. That was it. And you get this report that says nothing wrong with this person. Line up the proper experts and explain the science. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. There's about 86 billion neurons. Yeah, that's billion neurons, and about 100 trillion connections. Think of the number. That is incredible amount of complexities in your human brain. So when you have a TBI, localize the symptoms to specific parts of the brain. Okay, try to do that if you can. Like if it's a calculation problem, the parietal lobe. Also, don't get caught up in just one part of the brain. It affects one thing. It's a beautiful thing, and we still don't understand fully how the brain works. So let me give you an example. If you're talking about working memory, you might find your own definitions, but something I like to put together is like, you hold the information together, you have to store it, and then you have to retrieve it. So you need attention when you're seeing something to remember it. Well, your frontal lobe is part of the things that helps your attention. If that's effective, but I'm not having the attention to remember something. Well, if it's an object that's coming at me, right? If the car's coming at me and I have to remember the fact that the car's coming at me, well, it's my visuospatial, my parietal lobe area that, is affected. If that's affected, then I can't remember that. I must see the object. So my occipital lobe, if that's affected, I can't see it. What about emotion, right? Doesn't emotion play a role in something? You remember certain events like your daughter's birthday or something like that because of it's tied into something, an emotion. So if you have a good emotion with something, you'll remember it. So the whole brain is involved in working memory. Okay, so what if you start forgetting things? What if you start, forgetting this emotion part of the brain, and that emotion area is connected to a loved one? And now you look at a loved one's picture and you're like, who's this person? Or they're calling you on FaceTime. Imagine if it's a grandmother and it's a granddaughter calling on FaceTime and they're like smiling, they're talking, but put the phone down and they ask their husband, who was that? I mean, can you imagine the joy that's lost? It happens all the time in Alzheimer's patients, right? If you've had experience with that. And same thing here too, over time, this is what happens. And so we don't get to go back and retry the case. So bring all this stuff up right now and say, hey, we got to factor in for all these things that can happen in the future. This is something I put together. It's not an exhaustive list and it keeps changing all the time. Just look at the different parts of each part of the brain, like frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal, occipital, executive functioning in the frontal lobe. If that's affected, well, frontal lobe's affected. Well, sensory senses from your body goes up to your brain to the parietal lobe area and it senses all your pain. And you can do math over here, right? And you deny deficits if you're having issues with your parietal lobe. And temporal lobe, like hearing loss, musical skills, a lot of stuff that goes on here. And of course, the occipital lobe, seeing colors, seeing shapes. So just these few questions, you can just see how the entire brain's affected. So if you can just kind of bring in one item here and there, you can say, yeah, look at this, the whole brain's affected. Of course, the hormones, right? So your pituitary gland is right there in your brain. And remember this thing, you might have seen this on some reports saying empty cell turcica syndrome, where there's a big hole right there where the gland is supposed to be. That's because the fluid fills that space and it flattens out the gland what's supposed to be there, so the gland's not functioning anymore. Also, sometimes when people get pregnant and they deliver the baby, and if they have a lot of bleeding, they actually have, hypoxia or less blood or less oxygen to the pituitary gland, and they have a Sheehan-like syndrome. So same thing can happen here. If there's some kind of a bleeding event, maybe there's less oxygen to the pituitary gland and you're not getting enough hormones in there. Look at this, growth hormone, muscles, organs, nerves, everything's affected. ACTH, cortisol, steroid, a response to stress, diabetes can be affected, blood pressure can be affected. Remember that. We'll come back to that later on. Of course, your ovaries, testes, testosterone is affected. The female cycles could be affected. Prolactin, mammary glands, TSH, thyroid kind of affects everything we do, right? Oxytocin. So what is this fear perception? If something is truly supposed to make me afraid, well, I should be afraid of that. If something is not supposed to make me afraid, I shouldn't be afraid of that. But what if I'm afraid of something I shouldn't be afraid of, and vice versa? Would that affect the way I live outside? If I see danger, I would just, walk towards it, right? So would that be a problem? And of course, vasopressin, that's ADH, that's a blood pressure is affected because you retain water. So that can affect your blood pressure as well. So all these things, this is just a brief overview. So if maybe these are affected, that could be a brain problem. So how do you overcome prior medical history? So I say tackle it head on. Find the problematic priors. So I had a case where this guy had a back issue, and I see about 5 or 6 times in the ER report that he's gone to the hospital for that, and he had a 15-year history of chronic back pain. So of course the DME jumped on that, and they're like, "Hey, it's all priors." But guess what? I looked at every single one of those back issues, and every time he went to the doctor, he had asthma. So when you have asthma, you cough a lot. When you cough a lot, well, you're depleting yourself of magnesium and all these other elements, and so you're getting into spasms. So yes, he has chronic back pain, but because he had asthma, he had that. It wasn't every day. Now after the event, it's every single day. So get the priors, find the answers, and tackle them head on so you own them. You don't have to, use it if you don't need to, but you at least know that you can use it and it won't harm you. And of course, diabetes, okay? Oh, they love to say it's all the diabetes, but is it controlled? Well, the first thing that goes in diabetes is your peripheral nerves, right? So you could have, some amputations, or you start losing senses in your fingers or your feet. Also, one of the criteria is that, those blood vessels, the nerves in your heart, those tiny nerves in the heart, they also go away because they're the tiny nerves. And so you don't feel your heart attack when you have diabetes. So they'll drop dead. That's one of the complications of this. So are they having any of these symptoms, or are they having normal pulses on their exams? If they're having all these normal pulses, yes, they have, a really high A1C, maybe 7 or 8, but it's kind of well controlled. So when you compare your individual to his pre-existing function, it's not to somebody else's pre-existing function level, it's to their own pre-existing functional level. So if you have a high-functioning client, say a neurologist or a neuropsychologist or something like that, well, I think that they can answer probably better answers on their neuropsych test than most people. But that's because they already have a high functioning, life. So I heard one time where an attorney did not take up a neurologist who had a TBI because another neurologist said that they don't have a problem. Well, that's because they're high functioning. The test that they're testing is so basic that they would pass it because they have enough skills to overcome that. But you got to ask those fine, questions about it. Of course, cast the contradictions of the DME in their own incorrect statements. Sometimes, of course, they tell you what, it's all a bunch of priors, just like we saw in the NFL case. Sometimes the doctors say it was all just prior history. You have to, and of course, to help them out, I would say that yes, you do have to rule out that it's not from the past, right? You have to make sure that this is not from your current TBI. But are they doing that? Are they going back to the history and saying that yes, they had diabetes, but these are the symptoms? Yes, they have blood pressure, but look, they were passing out all the time, or they were going to the hospital for this, or they had some strokes in their brain because of their blood pressure. Are they showing you any of this, or are they just saying, well, history of blood pressure, it's because of this, and that's all it is? Well, are they pointing to any medical records? They probably won't. So that's how you get them. So remember, if they're saying they're actually telling you, okay, the priors caused the TBI kind of symptoms, right? I say thank you. Thank you very much. Because what they have actually done by doing that is they have given you that diabetes can cause brain damage. Blood pressure can cause brain damage. They've given you this, and I'll show you how to use it later. So again, they tell you that, hey, the priors caused the client symptoms. But then again, they say the physical exam is normal. So if the priors were so bad that they caused the client symptoms, where's that abnormal physical exam? And in reality, your client does have symptoms. And if they did it correctly, you would actually find some abnormalities, but they don't even find that. And it's often done fast and incorrectly. And the exam is normal. Peripheral exam is normal. Eye exam is normal. Senses are normal. Remember, I've even seen this with plaintiff doctors as well. It's not just defense doctors alone. It's both sides. I've seen it. It's done so fast, and I'm just looking at the report like, what is this? So be aware of that. There's always good doctors out there, but I'm just saying, be aware when you see an abnormality that you take control of it by catching these contradictions. So what does it mean that when they say that the physical exam is normal in a person who has diabetes and blood pressure? It means that the diabetes and blood pressure are under control. It's not so bad. The prior diabetes and blood pressure could not have caused the patient's TBI because according to them, the physical exam is normal. So how could this have caused it, right? Catch that contradiction. So how do you use it for your advantage, right? So first on your depot or across, or if I'm your expert or their expert, elicit this information that, brain damage can cause diabetes and blood pressure. Remember, we saw the pituitary where I showed you the ACTH was high. So if those glands are abnormal, it affects other things. And in turn, your diabetes and blood pressure go up because of the brain damage. Also get from them that, with the TBI, sometimes they have other injuries as well. And so they're taking steroids, right? Or pain medications. So these steroids, of course, they can increase your diabetes. They can increase the blood pressure. So if they had something already, it's getting even more worse because of the new steroid they're taking. Sometimes, if they're feeling lethargic or if they're foggy, they might want to give them stimulants, and the stimulants also raise this. So look for those drug interactions and how the drugs are also increasing this diabetes and blood pressure, which are the pre-existing conditions. So let's kind of put it all together, right? All these things on the side that I've written here, the same thing as this diagram, so you can follow either way you want. So in the beginning, they say it's all a bunch of priors, right? But we're able to say that if your physical exam is normal, pulses are normal, well, then the priors did not cause the brain damage, okay? Then you show that the client had a TBI event, and then there's brain damage, okay? And because of the brain damage, you're taking the meds. Of course, your history will show all this, medical records will show this, that they're taking medications based on that. You've got from their experts over here that, the TBI meds do increase diabetes and blood pressure, all these, pre-existing symptoms, and that the brain damage also increases this. And this in turn increases the brain damage. Now, how do we get this? Remember when they told us that the priors have caused all the symptoms? Well, they gave us that the diabetes can cause this and the blood pressure can cause this. So by virtue of that, now we say that the diabetes has caused this. So putting it all together, the priors did not cause the brain damage, have a TBI event. This precipitates the need for taking medications. That increases these pre-existings. The brain damage itself increases the pre-existings. And because they told you that the prior brain damage actually causes the increase in diabetes and blood pressure, you say that increases more brain damage. So you kind of loop it all in and say that all of this is causing the brain damage and not the priors. Ginger, do you want it to bring in another sponsor?
Yeah, we got two more real quick, and then we'll be able to finish the conversation and see if there's any more questions that are coming in. And then also Blue is going to be doing our copy giveaway with HMR. So I'm excited about that. But let me first real quick, I'm going to bring in Patrick with OnPoint Legal Nurse Consulting. We love working with this company. You guys have heard me rave about them. But Patrick is here to share all the great things that they do over there. And we've got a lot of fun things coming up. Patrick's going to also be with us in Nashville when we do our 3rd annual TBI Pain, Suffering, and Damages Conference, which is going to be May 4th through the 7th. We have so many fun things planned, Patrick. I cannot wait. I'm excited to hear you speak at that event as well.
I'm very excited, and of course, thank you again for today and your ongoing support with everyone. It's fascinating. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Reddy, and nice to see you, Eric. My name is Patrick Stonich. I'm one of the nurses over at OnPoint. I'm also one of the program directors, specifically in long-term care, which is all of the stuff after the hospital. So skilled nursing facilities, group homes, home health, and hospice. Our firm, we do full litigation support. So from intake to trial, we help with finding experts. We also do merit screenings. The biggest, or one of the biggest things we do, which is very supportive for this topic, is the life care plans and pain and suffering reports. And I know we talk about those a lot. From a nursing perspective, which I'll be speaking about in Nashville, the pain and suffering reports are very important because it kind of gives a different perspective of, instead of just the life care plan, which is extremely important, the pain and suffering reports really focus on everything that has happened to that individual from injury and how it's affecting their daily lives. I do a lot of the pain and suffering reports. They're a lot to put together, but they're very beneficial for the attorneys and for the clients. One thing I'm in scrubs today because I actually was being a real life nurse, and I was doing case management. I was filling in for a nurse in New Jersey because I happen to be licensed there as well. And it's so important of the follow-up to all of these wonderful plans that we put into place or put into play. And the doctors write wonderful orders. They want us to put all of this equipment in place and keep following the patient. The only way to keep making sure everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing and we don't see those little changes is the importance of following up with case management, which OnPoint does as well. It was fascinating today. I have a lot of reports to send back to people who aren't doing their jobs. But it's very, very important to make sure that, all of the things that we have in place and everything that we utilize is actually done. And unfortunately, in my position, we still see that not happening. And small things happen that lead to really terrible big things. And it still takes a big group effort even after the injury happens. And I think that's something that's really important that we have to focus on. I'm always here to help. I love teaching and educating and answering questions about nursing. And I'll put my information in the chat. And it's nice to see everyone again. I know Blue is coming up next. He'll get upset if I talk too long. So, and it was very nice, fantastic presentation. I really appreciate it. And if you guys need anything, just let me know.
So for everybody watching at home or at your office right now, you can tell we all have a good time on these webinars. So we all know each other pretty well. But I just want to thank everybody who utilizes OnPoint and all of our partners, because they really are amazing people doing great things. And thank you so much, Patrick, for, I said, you were at your other job, doing the real work, and then coming in and doing this webinar. We really appreciate it. And we love having you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. And as you said, Blue is up next. Blue, it is great to see you. You're with HMR. And how long have you been with HMR, Blue? I've been meaning to ask you.
Hey, Ginger, and thank you, Patrick. That took a little longer than we all would have liked, but we'll allow it this time, I guess. So, Ginger, to answer your question, I've been with the HMR a little over 3 years now, but I've been in the industry for about 7, and I was a firefighter before that in my previous life. So
Oh, wow.
that's a little fun fact for everyone out there.
I love that. Well, thank you. I mean, we're just excited to have you with us, and tell us a little bit more about what HMR can do for everybody watching at home.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Ginger, for having us today. Eric, always good to see you, my friend. Prem, I just want to say congrats on Reddy's law firm anniversary today. I saw it on LinkedIn, so congrats on that. And keep up the good work. So who is HMR? Essentially, we specialize in catastrophic injury cases, traumatic brain injuries, like what Prem is going over today, spinal cord damage, amputees, the full gamut, right? There's 3 ways that we can be a funding source for attorneys. And I'm just going to touch on those briefly. And then, if you guys have any questions, put it in the chat or feel free to contact me directly. First of which is going to be case cost funding. So especially on TBI cases, I get a lot of calls for experts, right? To shore up these cases. Experts, as we all know, are not cheap, especially, depending on the level of expert you want to have attached to your case. Sometimes that can be a heavy lift, and depending on your caseload, if you have a few hundred cases and you need experts on even half of those, I mean that gets expensive. So feel free to reach out. We can step in and help out with that. The second funding bucket is medical funding. So we function for medical funding in 39 states here nationwide. The reason I bring that fun fact up is to let you know that we work with providers nationwide, right? So whatever it is you need, from chiro all the way up to neuro and everything in between, feel free to reach out if you have a case that's outside of your backyard where you don't know any of the providers and you got to get your client seen. I get those phone calls a lot as well. So third and final is going to be the pre-settlement funding piece. This is a tough time for your clients, right? Probably the toughest time that they've had thus far. When I was a firefighter, I would always say, people get to meet me on the worst day of their life, right? And I'm still kind of in that wheelhouse, but we understand that, and are here and willing to step in, if they need to pay their mortgage, or I've had child support, things like that come across my desk. So whatever we can do to help, feel free to reach out. I'm always available and open for business. And thanks again, everyone, for being on the call today.
No, thank you, Blue. I mean, it's always a joy to have you pop in and say hello to everybody. And while we have you, let's go ahead and do the coffee winner giveaway. Are you okay with that? Right before we get back to Dr. Reddy.
Yeah, no, that works great. Let's go ahead and do it. So drum roll, please.
Dun, dun,
The
dun.
coffee winner is going to be Ed Hershaway out of Joplin, Missouri, with Hershaway Law Firm. So
Yay.
congrats, Ed. You'll be receiving some valuable diesel fuel to get you going through the day, and yeah, enjoy that.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Ed. And myself, my Ted and Blue, we're all going to reach out to you after this webinar and make sure that you get this copy. And don't worry, guys, if you didn't win, there are many, many more chances. I think Ted has given away thousands of coffee now across the country. But if you didn't win, we've got another webinar coming up next week that I'll be putting on connectionology.com. So that way you get a chance to hopefully win. So enjoy. Blue, thank you for being with us. We can't wait to see you again soon. And thank you for all that you do. I hope everybody watching will save your contact information that you're going to put in the chat box and reach out if they have any extra questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Ginger. Have a good one.
You too. All right, Dr. Reddy, I'm going to send it back to you. And I see the time, but feel free to go over if you need to a little bit, because I saw some good questions that'll be coming in as well.
Yeah, Dr. Reddy, if you don't mind, can I chime in
Sure.
with 2 questions?
Please.
Okay, first one. Are the symptoms of mild TBI the same as the symptoms of a pituitary gland injury?
Right. So pituitary gland is a part of the brain. So it's one part of the TBI symptoms, if you want to call it like that. So if you see specific pituitary gland injury without any head injury, then that's your pituitary gland problem. So it just depends on what part of the brain is affected.
Okay. Here's an interesting one. How do you respond if the defense lawyer is arguing that the plaintiff is suffering from long COVID, not a mild TBI?
Yes, I'm facing that problem right now. It was it's a very good question. So what I did in this case that I have right now is, and this person had a very severe COVID. I go specifically to the symptoms after the TBI. It depends on when the COVID happened. Was it before the event or after the event? If it's before the event, you just want to always look at the symptoms. He had COVID. Did he have any symptoms after that? He had the TBI, and he had these X, Y, and Z symptoms after that. It is a problem. It really is a problem. But you have to go with the actual symptoms that they're having. They didn't have it before, and they're having it now. And ask them to prove to you from the research where they can show you that this is long COVID, that long COVID has this. Is it because long COVID is most likely like a brain fog over the whole thing, as opposed to specific things like, hey, I'm forgetting certain things. I'm very rude. I'm having mood swings. Where do you see that in long COVID? So look for those symptoms.
All right. Those are all the questions for now.
All right. All righty. Okay. So let's go. All right. So we just finished this. Now we'll go here. How do you compare the old versus new symptoms? And guys, please stay, because this is really good stuff that's coming up right at the end. I saved the best for last for all those people that are staying till the end. Kind of like, the game, you don't want to leave before the end. You never know what happens. That's kind of what's happening here. So when you're looking at the old and new symptoms, have you ever had that time where you have an accident, then you have a second accident, and you're like, oh, I want to just get rid of this case? Well, don't get rid of it so fast. I had a case where I had 2 accidents. So what do? So the client was being treated at physical therapy, right? So that was a good thing. So I take the last rehab note before the event, like before the second accident, and say he's got some improvement. He's still got a 7 out of 10 pain. He's got limitations in range of motion, but kind of max benefit out of physical therapy, right? So I have those notes there. He has the actual second accident. Now I look at an after. Well, the pain is still kind of 7 to 8, but it doesn't really go beyond 8. So nothing has changed really from before. So where's the change right after the accident, right? It hasn't really changed much. So look at the range of motion, those numbers that tell you, hey, this is how it was before, this is how it was after. The pain scale before and after. And even the cognitive, like, hey, before he had these cognitive symptoms, after he had these cognitive symptoms. So really just go back and measure this. Same thing if you don't have 2 accidents, if you just have 1 event. And look at, the range of motion he had before. Maybe the last rehab note for anything that you can find, right? Anything you can find, tangible evidence in the charts. This was his function before, and this was his pain scale before. And after the accident, this is what happened. So look for the before and after. And if their DME or even anybody says, hey, it's all just a bunch of priors, all from the past, ask him to show you exactly what was his range of motion before, what was his pain scale before, and probably they won't be able to give that to you. Again, we talked about the white matter hyperintensity from the past. If they're just saying it's white matter hyperintensity, ask them to show you where's that cognitive decline before in his history. It was highly functioning before. Remember the 6-month and the 2-year mark? These are two things you want to worry about because they always tell you it gets better. Yeah, usually in the first 6 months is when you can see the most improvement. You can get improvement up to the 2-year mark, and then usually it's very hard for this any improvement after that. How do you handle the DME or the ortho exam? Get into it. Challenge the criteria. What criteria are they using? Like we saw the criteria that the NFL was using. Challenge it. Are they finding some articles and basing their opinions on some outdated articles? Catch them. We don't get the chance to come back later when the DSM-5 or 6 catches up to our client's symptoms and says, okay, this constellation of symptoms is now a TBI. We don't have that luxury. So we only have one chance. So you go with the symptoms. His life has changed because these symptoms have changed from the past. Don't get stuck on getting a diagnosis. Don't get stuck on, hey, you're going to tell me that this is a TBI or not. I've helped a couple of individuals, and what happened was their own expert kind of shot them down because they didn't give them anything. So what they did was you take what the other expert is saying, and he's telling you, you know what? Your patient does not have a TBI. He's got just depression. Well, thank you. If they give you any symptom, take that. Ask them, how bad can depression get? They might give you everything. They might just say that one symptom might affect the mood, might affect the relationship, might affect the thinking, cognition, decision-making, and everything, right? So you got it right there. Hey, his enjoyment of life is gone just from one symptom. So don't get caught up with the TBI diagnosis or post-concussion syndrome. Get anything out of them and ask them, how bad can it get? That's a good way to do that. And keep it simple, just like this, like a first-year medical student could answer it. And you put it like that, it's kind of obvious. They can't just say it's too technical for you to understand. It's very simple. Talk about like how in Alzheimer's, it takes a long time for debris to accumulate and cause damage. So what do I mean by that? You have an injury, you have the nerves that are damaged, and because of that, you have some symptoms. Well, the damage causes debris. The debris is left around, and if it's not, taken up and engulfed and taken care of, it's lying around right there. If it's lying around right there, it's going to cause more damage to the other nerves around it, and now you're going to have damage later. So just like in Alzheimer's, you might see the symptoms of TBI later. So the client's okay now, but it's going to get worse and worse later. The brain, it's different when you look at long-term pain versus short-term pain, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. And also, like you said, elicit from the doctor, hey, what part of the brain's affected? Like if they're having balance problems, maybe the cerebellum, attention, frontal lobes. If they're bumping into things, maybe there's orientations off, parietal lobe. If they're having word blindness, like they can see the word, but they can't read the word, but they can, for example, the word frontals right here. They can see that word, but they can't read it. But they can say, hey, that's an F, that's an R, that's an O. So they can read individual words. So things like that. Show that the whole brain's affected, as we talked about in working memory. The whole brain is affected in doing a certain action. So it's not just that one part of the brain's affected, the whole brain's affected. No, this is just a small list of possible areas in the brain that affect pain. There's so many areas like prefrontal cortex, all of these things. So just to give you an idea, when they tell you, the brain is affected, but it doesn't affect their pain, well, dive into these areas. And we'll go into a little bit more here. This is something I created overnight, and it keeps changing, and you'll find all kinds of information that might explain it better, that might contradict to it, and as science keeps changing, it keeps changing. So this is just an overview, just to give you an idea, to engage with them that the brain does affect the way that you feel pain. There is such a thing called the descending pain modulation system. So we're talking about from the brain down all the way down to your spinal cord, okay? This is the modulating system where it blocks your pain. So let's start from the beginning. You have a pain impulse. When you have pain and injury, you have inflammation, you can have cytokines and prostaglandins come in. You can also have like other sources of sensation, like, touch, position sense, and all that stuff that go in to the back part of your spine, the dorsal column, a medial lemniscus pathway. But don't worry about that, because I just mentioned it here because this also has a role in going up here and coming down and having an analgesic effect. But the main thing I want to talk about is this pain. It goes up here, and you have these nociceptors, like the slow fibers and the fast fibers. Well, they're slow because these are unmyelinated, and these are fast because they're myelinated. They hold a conduction of electricity, and so it goes fast. So when you sense pain here, what happens is it goes all the way up. It goes up through your spinal cord, okay? And on the lateral side of your spinal cord. In that lateral side, you'll have three things. You have your spinal thalamic tract. So they go from the spine to the thalamus, all the way to the thalamus, okay? And from the thalamus, it goes to, you remember that area which is in the post-central gyrus, in the parietal lobe, the sensory cortex. So it kind of goes there, and you sense all this pain, spinal thalamic tract. Then you have the spinal reticular tract. So as the name sounds, it goes to the reticular area right here in your brainstem. So senses go up, it goes here, and then it affects this back down. So it's not going to your brain. So this is kind of a automatic response to pain. So guess what? If this is affected, you have an injury, your brain's not able to automatically go down and suppress that pain. And there's another one called the spinotectal tract. Well, this is to your eyes. So if this is affected, it affects the way that you orient your eyes to the stimulus. If something is affected, I need to look at the stimulus, right? So that's what this is. So all this is affected. And it goes all the way up to the thalamus, goes up to the brain area. And from here, again, it goes to different parts of the brain, and then comes down to the brainstem and starts modulating the pain here. And see this limbic area right here? Well, what's over there? Some of your emotions. So it can affect it positively or negatively. So if you have stress or if you have a negative emotion, you could feel more pain. If you have positive emotions, you could have less pain. And that's why. So some of the areas here, the periaqueductal gray, all these endorphins, your body's endogenous endorphins that you produce. And again, same thing here also, your body's endorphins. These numbers here are what are affected, like 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I'll let you go into that on your own. And this area right here, the norepinephrine is produced and serotonin is produced. So all these things, your opioids, norepinephrine, serotonin, all of these come here to your spinal cord in the dorsal horn, the back part of your spinal cord. And what they do here is they activate the opioid receptors, that suppress your pain. They also activate the inhibitor interneuron. And how does that work? It releases GABA and glycine to dull the pain. Remember, GABA and glycine are inhibitory hormones, so neurotransmitters. So remember, your patient keeps getting GABA medicines. That's why. And also, it inhibits the substance P and glutamate, which actually cause the pain. So you're activating these things here, which inhibit the pain, and you're stopping this, which causes the pain. So the net effect is you're hyperpolarizing the neurons. So it's hyperpolarized. So it takes a lot more to trigger it to go into pain. So you're inhibiting that pain. Now, that was at the systemic level, right? The brain all the way down. This is more of a local level, at the spinal cord level. So these are the 4 pathways. Like, you have your C fibers, which are your pain and temperature, your A delta, your pain and temperature, your A beta, which are your vibration sense and all that, and then the A alpha, which are proprioception and voluntary muscle contraction. So we'll talk about these C fibers. These two are the same picture. So I'll just talk about the C first. So when you have a slow pain, you release substance P. And when you release substance P, what happens actually is that the substance P can come back out here, and you now sensitize the receptor to pain, which means that just a little bit of pain can trigger your response. So in the past, you took a lot of pain to trigger the same response. Now the threshold has been lowered. So just a little bit of pain, a stimulus will cause you a lot of pain. And you remember those days when you had a boo-boo and you went to your mom and you're like, hey, mom, I have pain right here. And she just goes and rubs it like that. Well, that vibration, that rubbing over there, what that does is that actually sends GABA neurons, the inhibitory neurons, to go here and stop that pain. So it's real. So let's take a look at it over here real fast. So you have all these pain fibers coming in, and from the C fibers only, not the A delta, the C fibers only, you have the substance P that's released. The substance P goes back up here, and it sensitizes this receptor to pain and lowers your pain threshold, okay? So that's how you have more pain. Chronic pain, you have more pain. It's different. So when you have that exam and they're like, oh, I just barely touched the guy and he's, overreacting and he's definitely faking it. Well, are they considering the fact of how chronic pain affects the person? And also the vibration, right? The vibration also, when it comes here, what it does is it activates the inhibitory neuron, and this inhibitory neuron stops that pain impulse, okay? Initially, when you have this pain stimuli, what does it do? It does two things. It goes down this pathway, and it activates the second order neuron. It goes to your brain, and then you have pain. It also blocks that inhibitory neuron, saying, hey, inhibitory neuron, you don't come in and stop anything. So you're stopping the inhibition, and you're continuing the pain all the way through. So that's how the pain pathway works. So the vibration, it comes in and says, inhibitory neuron, you go ahead and stop that pain impulse. So that's how this works. And why is this important? This is the pathway which electric stimulation works, which you see in your rehab patients. They give the electric stimulation to stop the pain. And it's not a permanent cure, it's just temporary. So that's one of the things about that. But it can give them pause to be able to go and do some strengthening exercises or something like that in order to rehabilitate. So you're temporarily blocking the pain so that they can go and do some rehab in order to get better. Now, also on those DMEs, find out if they took that exam in the morning or in the evening, because it makes a difference if you're tired. If you're tired, you have more pain, you're bending more. If you're fresh in the morning, hey, you're having less pain, you're reporting less symptoms. Also, are they on antispasm drugs? So if you have this report that says, hey, orthopedic exam says normal report, patient's got no spasms. Well, did they consider the fact that the patient was taking antispasmodic drugs or pain medication, so their pain was less the night before or the morning off? And so consider that as well. Same thing with the steroids and the pain medication. Had they had a Toradol shot, have they just taken the pain meds? That's why, because they're expecting to go to an exam and stay there for some time. So they're expecting some pain. So are they taking these drugs? And because of that, they're having less pain. Symptoms can show up years later, like in the spinal cord. When you have spinal cord, think about this. And this happened to my dad's brother, actually. After a long time, he had this narrowing of his spinal cord, and suddenly he just couldn't feel his legs, and he was walking funny. Why is that? Because, the spinal cord is up here, right? So everything from the brain to your body to tell it to move, right? Those motor things, they come in from the brain here. So if you block it off here, there's no senses from your, no impulse from your brain to the rest of the body to tell it to move. Also, all your senses come from the body all the way up here to your brain. Those are sending tracks. That's also kind of cut off over there. So all the sensation from your lower body is not coming into your brain. So that's a pretty significant thing. So just because you have a narrowing there and it's good now, it does not mean that you won't have problems in the future. Also, another thing I guess I forgot to mention in the back was, now you have this MRI and you have this, problem in the disc, which was there from the past. Okay, so the patient's got a bad L4, L5, and it's, just so bad, and you see it on the MRI, but he never had any symptoms before. When the brain's affected, the brain cannot come and negate that pain as it normally does. So you have the same back X-ray or MRI, but the brain's affected. So now in the past, he could stop that pain with his brain. Now he can't stop that because the brain's affected. That's how you bring that in. Also, when the DME says, I've patient's normal, normal TBI, and it's not a TBI or it's not a spine problem, I want to ask him, how many TBI clients have you seen? Have you seen these TBI clients like 10 or 20 years down the road? I mean, have you seen the progression of the disease? How many have you personally seen and come back and said, hey, you know what, I made a mistake. This guy actually got worse over time. And also ask them, did they take into consideration the pain and the range of motion before the event versus right after the event? And on the DME neuropsych testing, look, it's most of the time they say, you know what, you can't record it. It's, proprietary information. And so, they're keeping it under closed doors. And the tester is looking at the results and it's biased right there. So I like to bring in the fact that it's not like a double-blind study where, you have a double-blind study and the person who's really ending up interpreting the results doesn't really know what was happening at the front end. So that's a better test. So this is not like that. Also, copyright, I mean, you can go to YouTube and you can probably find videos on all these tests and how to do a lot of them. And so if it's already out there, what's the real copyright? Also, I mean, the test is kind of designed to fail if used wrongly, because I mean, I didn't know when to stop, so I kept on taking these tests. So both the medical exam, medical school exams, and also the bar exams, at the end, your concentration is not as good as it is in the beginning. Okay, so are they accounting for that on these testing? At the 8th hour of testing, is the client just not remembering because they're tired? And are they saying he's faking because he's just not remembering it properly? And also, let's just say, they had the test before. Your DME gave it, sorry, your doctor gave it to them. Their treating doctor gave the test to them, and now their DME or the neuropsych on the other side is giving the test for the second or third time. And so they're seeing this test again. So if you're saying this is proprietary and it makes a big difference for the client never to have seen it before, if the client is seeing it once or twice before, is it really the same results? And if they've taken their pain medication and they're sleepy and they're tired, and they're affecting their results, is that also taken into consideration? The guy who's doing the neuropsych testing is a neuropsych guy, and this happened to me. It's kind of a funny story, really. So the neuropsych guy printed up this report and said, "Oh, it's all from the prior history. Oh, this is all from his endocrine system was bad before, so it's really bad right now." He quoted a couple of studies on there saying these research articles, of course, it's boilerplate, so they use it all the time. So he quoted all these studies as to why endocrine systems is affected. If that's affected, that causes the brain problem. And so I said, okay. I looked at all the studies. What he didn't realize was that I worked with the people that of the study that he quoted this whole event on. So I'm like, you just quoted my people on this study. So I looked at the study and I saw that it clearly wrote in that study that all the tests that were used were not similar. So you have to use it with caution. So I was about to, I was looking forward to, the neuropsych exam, but they settled the case. So I never got to depose him, but I would have loved to seen that. So they always like to quote, "Hey, it's always been the prior stuff, right? But are you an endocrinologist? You're a neuropsych guy. You're not making that diagnosis. You don't do this in clinical practice. So how are you making this correlation with endocrine systems and the brain? Are you considering that patient can get cancer later on, because the mechanism of the brain to repair itself is not so good anymore. So you can get increased chances of cancer. When you're giving the testing, if you give more time or more cues, it changes the whole test. You can come up with a normal test. So all those things are, to be taken consideration of if there's no recording at all. Was it noisy in the room? Was it distractions? My client went one time to a test and there was stuff all over the place because he had just moved into that place. That's a distraction. So you want to have to know these things also. Are they trained for TBI? Are these tests geared for TBI? Do they know how to score the test? And another interesting example, I had a case where they the opposite party had a psychiatrist MD and who was a JD and an MD scoring the test. So look into the fact, are they trained to score that test? Do they have the certification for that or not? Because the guidelines say that the PhD really is the person that's supposed to be doing this test. So look into all of that. Ask them to show the manual and show that if the manual shows all these things, like they're taking into consideration the concentration at the 8th hour and the TBI symptoms, So what I like to say is, if you know how to perfectly score this test, then you also know how to perfectly fail this person, because you're saying nobody else can do this, right? And of course, if the client fails the validity test, I mean, is the exam valid? And the DME ortho test, and I know what you're thinking. When you're looking at this picture, you're looking at it and saying, I've never seen an ortho DME do it that good. Probably right. And sometimes I've even not seen a plaintiff's doctor do that good. But in general, you hope that they do a good job of that. Are they doing the sensory exam in 5 seconds? I saw the case where I listened to the audio recording and I saw the time that they were actually doing the sensory exam, and it was literally 5 seconds for the sensory test. I can't even tell you all the names of the sensory tests in 5 seconds. How are you doing it in 5 seconds, right? Get that out there. Are they looking at the client's face, when they're doing this? If they're saying they're grimacing in pain, they're doing the test, but they're grimacing in pain. Because, guess what? They're on the computer trying to type away and the client's faced away from them because they're examining the back or something like that. So are you looking at the client? Is it safe? Is the client, having a gait belt? Because if you're asking the client to bend forward and you're just sitting back, then what if the client falls? He's got a balance problem because of TBI. That's not safe. Why don't you have an extra helper in the room to help in case the client falls, or to look at the client's face if they're grimacing or not? Are you checking the blood pressure, the heart rate? Are you seeing if the client's on antispasmodic pills or pain pills, right? So what direction was the DME faced when the client was complaining of the symptoms? How deep was the palpation of the spinal cord? They're saying no spasms, no pain. Well, are you actually palpating deep enough, or are you just doing it over their clothes and just calling it a day? And are they considering the fact that the brain does have an effect on the body? Every single doctor has studied about the brain. They've studied about they've done a psych rotation. They should know about this, about the brain spine or the brain pain connection. So talk to them about that. So if they're saying that your client is guarded even at a slight touch, well, maybe he's not a faker. Maybe he's guarded because he does really have hypersensitivity to that area. And are they doing the cranial nerve testing properly? If they're doing a smell test, are they closing the client's eyes and closing one nostril and giving them, something to smell on one side and something different on the other side? And let's just say that, for an arbitrary reason, if they say like an orange and some coffee powder, right? Are those things on the table and the client has just seen them before you ask them to perform the test, or are they hidden away? And when the client closes their eyes, they're bringing them out and doing this. So you gotta look into the fact if they're actually doing this cranial nerve testing properly. And unfortunately, I've seen this, on both sides, both the plaintiff side and the defense side. So that's part of the reasons why, we're seeing issues with our clients. And that's all I have for today. And just thank you for listening. And this is my information. If you ever want to get a hold of me, there's my number. Call me directly. That's my cell number. And that's my email. And that's the address on my website. I do have some information on parts of the brain if you want to look at it and use it on your exams. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Dr. Reddy, thank you very much. Very, very informative as always. We appreciate the lessons learned and your time going through this with us today. I'm going to turn it back over to Ginger to wrap things up.
Absolutely. That was incredible, Dr. Reddy. And it is always wonderful to have you with us. I remember when you spoke at the national, or actually, I'm about to say national TBI conference, but it's the Nashville TBI conference that we did last year, and you did an amazing job. We're doing that again this year. Very excited. I just wanted to show the dates real quick so you guys have that. We have a lot of great surprises in store this year, and it just keeps getting better and better and better. So I hope everyone will go to connectionology.com to go check out the agenda and join us in just less than 2 months now. So Eric, I know that you'll be there with us as well. We're looking forward to it. I am going to send everybody the contact information for Dr. Reddy, for Eric, and all of our incredible partners today. Thank you to everybody at OnPoint, Fox AE, EmotionTrac, as well as HMR. We love working with these groups, and we really appreciate everybody supporting them as well, because in return, you support us here at Connectionology. So thank you. Dr. Reddy, I see some great comments coming in for you. I'm sure everyone will be touching base. So you guys, thank you again so much for watching today. We've got more webinars coming up next week, so stay tuned to your email as well as connectionology.com. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you, Dr. Reddy.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys soon. Bye, everyone. Have a great afternoon.